Participants, please stay connected. We'll start in next 2 minutes. Hi, Devashish sir, are you there? Devashish sir, are you there?
Hi, morning. I'm there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sir, I can hear you. Ajay sir has also joined.
I think Raju sir has not joined yet. He is supposed to join. Should I give him a call? He must be in the
Sure, sir.
midst of me, but he said he will join.
Sure, sure, sir.
Just
Participants, please stay connected. We'll start in next 2 minutes.
Hi Bhavani. Raju sir is joining in a minute. Huh?
Sure, sir, sure. Thanks, sir.
Okay. So what is going to be the format of the discussion like?
So, though initially we'll start with the industry perspective, how component ecosystem is shaping up in India, and then followed by the Q&A from the participants. So
Okay.
I'll just be introductory introduction to the session, and then I ask sir and you to speak on the component ecosystem, how things are developing, and then we can start with the Q&A.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Fine. That sounds fine. So, do you have a small presentation or report or is it more on a verbal format? It is?
If you if you if you are if you want, sir, you can present the presentation as well. No worries in that.
Mm, no. See, we have not prepared anything as such because that was not been
So we
communicated
can
to us
directly jump
yet.
into a verbal discussion
Yeah.
or Q&A. That will be better, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
brief introduction, and then we can directly jump into Q&A.
Sure.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
sounds
thank
good.
you so much. Yeah, thank you. So just we're starting a session in just 1 minute. Yeah, we're just waiting for some to join.
Yeah. Let the producer join.
Hi, Raju sir, are you there? Raju sir, are you there? Can you unmute yourself, sir?
So I can
Hello.
speak. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
Yeah, sir. Yeah, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Okay,
sir. Thank you so
one
much.
minute.
Thank you so much for
Can I?
joining.
No, just give me a minute. Can I put on my camera from here? From here? Ah, so this is not what we want. This is what we want. No? Settings. Why? So why is it not working? I don't know. Can you see me on the screen or no?
Not yet.
No, sir. Not.
I don't know. What is the problem here? Huh? Can I just log in again, please? Just give me a minute.
Sure, sir. Sure.
I switched
Just
on
give me a
my
second.
camera,
I'll just log in again.
Sure.
Looks better seeing.
Yeah, hi, sir. You are visible now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll just start with an introduction, sir, and then we can start with the session.
Okay, please. Let me know what you actually, I don't know exactly what is expected of me. I can answer questions or whatever you all would like to know. So I'll be happy to do
Sure.
that to the best of my knowledge. I'm there for that purpose only. So I don't know exactly what, because last time we had, met in physical mode in AeroCity. So that was different.
Right.
But yeah,
Right,
so I
sure.
have about half an hour, please. Let me know what I can do. I'm very much there for you. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Sure. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Expert series hosted by BM Financial and exclusive interaction with ELCINA to understand on the electronic component ecosystem. We have with us Mr. Raju Goyal, who is the Secretary General at ELCINA, and Mr. Debashish Chaudhary, sir, who is CFO at ELCINA. So the whole idea, thank you so much, sir, for joining the call. The whole idea of this call was just to understand how the component ecosystem, particularly in electronic, is shaping up now in India, and your thought process about how government is looking on the same, and what all industry can expect down the line over 3 to 5 years. So a brief about that, and then we can start with the Q&A.
Okay, so thank you, Bhavani, for inviting us here. This is the second opportunity we have. So firstly, ELCINA is, it's called the Electronic Industries Association of India. We are a 56-year-old body, and our main, activity is, promoting electronics manufacturing. And our focus has been more on components and the EMS industry. But of course, we represent the entire manufacturing supply chain and all the sectors within. Uh, Most of our members are actually from the MSME category, about 50% at least, and the remaining 50 are, the larger companies and the MNCs and, many of the corporate houses and the larger companies. So with that, I have one small question before I start. Who all are there on this call? I mean, are there, people from the finance industry, from,
Yes,
different,
sir.
financial institutions, etc.?
Yeah. So the audience which are there on the call is particularly from the finance and investor community, particularly from different mutual funds, insurance companies, and a couple of FIs as well. So broadly from my investment community, yes, sir.
And we are a manufacturer as well who are joining in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is the manufacturing company which is on board, please?
Yeah, this is N.S. Goman. I'm managing director of Shivalik Biometals. We make shunt resistors.
Yes. We know about your company, Mr. Guman. We have been in touch with your company actually for some policy issues. So we
Okay.
have been, supporting your team. Possibly you don't know,
Yeah,
but we have been supporting your team for some of the policy issues that have been brought to our notice.
yeah, I think that ended very successfully. So we thank you for your efforts.
Great, sir. Great, wonderful to be in touch with you here on this call. So
Yeah.
I will go through this very quickly. I mean, this is a very large, subject to really, explain, in great detail. But from from a broad point of view, right now, I'm just finishing this call. I will do this. So basically, India has been quite weak, in electronic components till now, and particularly also in raw materials. And our strength, which we have developed over the last, I would say, maybe 5, 6, 7 years, is more in the product and equipment assembly and equipment manufacturing. So if you can see that we are developing, we are manufacturing a lot of consumer, electronics, equipment. We have now started manufacturing some IT products. We are making a lot of the security equipment like CCTV cameras. The biggest story, of course, is that of, mobile phones. So we are now, I think, making, over 250 million mobile phones annually, and our targets are really huge. Also, almost 30% of the total manufacturing which happens is of mobile phones. So if you look at the entire industry today, it has our market has grown from about 27 billion or 30 billion dollars in the year 2014 to over 150 billion dollars today. And there is an expectation or there is a projection that this is going to increase very rapidly in high double digits. And the target that the government and industry have set is about 300 billion after, in 2.5 years from now, which is really huge. I mean, I'm not very sure whether we will really achieve that number because the growth rate required is in excess of 35-40%. But the growth is actually happening right now. But the growth is mainly in the product manufacturing and the product assembly side. So we are still weak. As you all know, you may have been, reading a lot about what is happening in the semiconductor space and even in the component space. So if we look at components, there are passive components, electromechanical components, PCBs, and then there is the active components or the semiconductors. So in all these categories, and there are more, we are the weakest in semiconductors, and we are also very weak in PCBs, the PCB manufacturing ecosystem. In the case of PCBs, we are, in the case of PCBs, we are, meeting hardly 15 to 16% of our demand. The current demand for PCBs in the country is about 4.5 to 5 billion. And it is a very basic component, on which all electronic equipment is built. Then we have the passive components, which are mainly the capacitors and the resistors, and there are several types of these. Then we have, the connectors, the electromechanical components, which, includes relays, etc. Relays, connectors, fuses, uh, cables. So this is also a very large area. And then of course, we have, raw materials. And we also have modules. So right now there is a huge demand of different type of modules. So when we talk of modules, we are talking about mainly audio and video modules. And these are used in all mobiles and in a very large number of other equipment, particularly the consumer electronics equipment, and also in security equipment. I mean, a camera is used almost everywhere today. So this huge demand and this huge industry is, I mean, it is growing, by leaps and bounds. As far as semiconductors is concerned, we have a very, very small industry, and this is an area which is of great interest for all of us. We all know about, the 76,000 crore or the $10 billion scheme, which was, rolled out by the government about 2.5, 3 years back. And we are seeing a lot of action there. But it will take time. It is not an industry which can grow very quickly because the industry has to, develop an ecosystem around it. So there are, a lot of raw materials required. I'm talking about the semiconductor area. A lot of technology is involved. Very high cost and very high tech equipment is involved. And of course, a lot of resources like power, water, and very reliable and very high quality power and water are required. So, semiconductors is actually not so much of a manufacturing industry. It is more of a process industry. It needs a lot of chemicals, gases, and all that. So the whole ecosystem of semiconductors is it's a very, I would say, very high tech kind of, ecosystem, and you need a lot of skill, a lot of money, a lot of capital for it. So right now, talking about semiconductors, we are working, we have now got, one large fab announced by Tata Electronics. We have got 3 OSAT, projects announced. OSAT is, or, what we also call the ATMP, which is the, assembly, test, mark, and pack. So basically, the assembly and testing is a very important part of the semiconductor manufacturing, supply chain. Of course, the base is the fab, where the wafer is fabricated. Excuse me. So the basic thing is the fab or the wafer. And then, from the wafer, then you make the chips. And the chips have to be packaged and, assembled and tested, etc. So these are largely, silicon chips now. And then the others, the other part is the compound semiconductors, which are not made of, silicon, where the costs and investments are lower, but they've got some very specific, applications, like a lot of, the applications in the defense area or in the industrial electronics area. They use, the compound semiconductors. So those are, a separate category of semiconductors. But of course, the largest volumes and the largest investments are now in the silicon, semiconductors. So the Tata fab, which is coming up, which is I think it's like a $9 or $10 billion fab. That is a silicon fab. And that is the only one that we have in the country right now. We have one in Mohali, which is a government fab, which is a much smaller project, but it's a very old project. And it was with the space department earlier. Now it is with the Ministry of Electronics. So these are the 2 fabs that we have right now. Of course, the Tata fab is coming up, and it will definitely take at least 2, 3 more years before it goes on stream. But the ATMP or the OSAT area, which is called, so ATMP basically stands for Assembly Test Mark and Pack, and OSAT is another term for it, which is the outsourced semiconductor assembly and test. So in some countries it is called OSAT. In India we typically call it as ATMP, but they are by and large the same. That is a very big area where a lot of activity can happen, and we need many ATMP plants. So I think from a financing point of view, I think the industry should be looking at ATMP projects, and these are the projects which basically buy the wafer, and from the wafer then they convert it this into finished chips, uh, or chip modules for specific applications. There are several projects in this area now. There is one Tata project which is coming up in Assam. There is another project of CG Power which is coming up in Gujarat. Then Keynes has announced a project now. Keynes Technology or Keynes Semiconductors. There is a Sahasra Electronics, Sahasra Semiconductor project, which is coming up in Bhiwadi, which is a smaller project, about 200 to 50 crores. The other projects are larger. Then there is another company, very old company, very well established company, CDIL, Continental Device India Limited, which has been actually manufacturing semiconductors in the countries for last 55, 60 years. So they are also expanding now. They make a lot of discrete semiconductors. So discrete semiconductors is then it is separate from the integrated or the ICs, the IC chips, what we say. So they make the diodes and the transistors, etc. And so all these are very interesting projects, and I think they're very tough because it's a high tech industry, but it's of great interest for the finance. I think it should be great interest for all of you, I would say. Coming to the remaining ecosystem, I spoke about the passive components, which are the capacitors and the resistors mainly. That is also a very large industry. All these industries are in billions of dollars. I can't really share all the numbers so quickly, but they are all growing very rapidly and the demand is huge. For example, capacitors and resistors are used in all electronic circuits. So plus, of course, then there is one more category of components, which is the wound components, where you typically have the transformers on the coils, which are also used in all electronic equipment. So there is no board without, or there is no, PCB board or PCB assembly which doesn't have a transformer and a coil, etc. So I think that is also another industry, another part of the industry which is very interesting. Uh, then we have, the electromechanical, as we mentioned, which is the relays, the connectors and all. There we have a fairly good and strong industry here. Even for transformers, we have a fairly strong industry. But still, we are not covering even 30 to 40% of our demand. And there is a lot of scope for growth. And all these components are also, can be exported also. There is some export already going on. I believe we are already doing about 4 to 4.5 billion of components export from the country, while our total manufacturing of components is about 12 to 13 billion dollars only. But we are looking to increase this very rapidly now, and there is a need to increase it. So one thing which is of interest from the component point of view is that there is a lot of focus of the government and the industry, particularly the government, I would say, to now support the growth of components in the country. Till now, components have not really grown so much because they need, they have a longer gestation period, and the capital output ratio is low. For example, if you invest 1,000 rupees in a component manufacturing plant, typically the output you would get is 2,000 rupees or maximum 3 to 4,000 rupees. But in product manufacturing or in product assembly, if you invest 1,000 rupees, you can easily get an output of 10,000 or 15,000 rupees. So the turnover of the money and the capital is very fast. But of course, the gross margin is lower in case of product assembly, while the gross margins are higher in case of components because the value addition is more. So I think from that point of view, components are very interesting now, and I would encourage all of you to look at this, electronic components very carefully. Also, please look at the semiconductor area. But I would also say, please look at the other components, which are going to grow very rapidly. And just by the way, a new scheme, especially for promoting components, and I'm not talking about semiconductors. For semiconductors, there is a separate scheme. So other than semiconductors, for the other components, there is a new scheme which is on the anvil. ELCINA is working very closely with the government and with other associations, sister associations. We have made very detailed recommendations to the government on what kind of support is required by way of capital subsidy, so that the capital investment is supported, and secondly also PLI, the production linked incentive. So this scheme is on the anvil. We are hoping that in a couple of months this scheme will be announced by the government. I think I should stop now. I've spoken a lot. Whatever I could think of, I've gone through. So I would now wait for questions, please. Thank you.
Sure, sir. Sure, sir. Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much. Great insights. Participants who wish to ask questions can raise their hands or even type in the chat box. So we have first question from Suraj Malu. Suraj, sir, you can go ahead with your question.
Hi, sir. Sir, when you mentioned that India already manufactures 12 to 13 billion of components, can you help understand which are these companies, top companies that manufacture these components and export as well?
This is a very long list, I would say. I mean, for example, because each sector or each segment of components has got a different list of companies which are manufacturing those components. For example, if you look at the PCB industry, the largest company in the country is called AT&S, which is based out of Mysore. So it is a multinational company. They are the largest in the country. Then we have companies like Epitome Components. We have Ascent Circuits, which has recently become part of the Amber Group, which is a public listed. Amber Group is publicly listed. So I mean, there are a very large number of companies. I mean, I can name possibly a few more for you. There is a company by the name of Circuit Systems in Gandhinagar. There is a company by the name of Micropack, which is in Maharashtra. So there are several companies. We can give you more names. They are there in our database. But overall, all these companies in the PCB area are small. The largest company is AT&S, which possibly is doing a turnover of some 700-800. I mean, maybe 1,000 crores or so. But globally, the large PCB companies are in hundreds of millions of dollars, or even over $1 billion or $2 billion in turnover. And it's a very capital intensive area.
Right.
So similarly, I mean, there are so many companies. If you look at the electromechanical side, there are companies like Amphenol, Molex, and both these are of course global companies. We have several domestic companies also. Maybe I can give you a longer list. I can't think of all the names right now.
Got it. That should be
I have
fine.
some names here. I'll just give you more names. I've got a huge list. For example, in passive components, you have large companies like TDK. Then you have TDK, of course, is Japanese. They have taken over EPCOS. They do a lot of passive components. Then there is Deki Electronics. There is Desai Electronics, which are fairly large companies. Then there is Globe Capacitors. So I mean, there is a very large list of companies.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have next question from Arthur Chai. You can go ahead with your question, sir.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. I'm just wondering, given your, can you hear me?
Sorry,
Can you hear me?
can you
No,
please
no
repeat?
worries.
Yeah, please, please.
Sorry, given your point sitting as the association, I'm just curious in terms of priority, which of these subsectors you mentioned are the focus areas for the government to try and develop in the next, 2 to 3 years? And which are the more important and easy, I don't know, in terms of priority, where is the government trying to foster growth in these areas?
Okay. See, while I would say that we have got, short supply, and we have got, inadequate capacity in almost all segments of components. But the areas where we have got, I would say where the government is focusing the most now, where we have very, very limited capacity or very limited capability and capacity. One, firstly is PCBs. So PCB is an area where we need to invest a lot, and where we don't have a supply chain, it needs a lot of raw materials, different types of raw materials. It is also it is not a green industry. It is in the orange category. So it needs a lot of treatment for pollution, etc. It needs a lot of waste management. So I think from that point of view, it is a very critical industry. But you see, without a PCB, you can't make anything. So it's a very basic. It's only 4 to 5% of the total BOM. If you look at the average bill of material in electronic equipment over all categories, it is barely 4 to 5% of the bill of material. But it's very important because uh, it is a base. So it's of great importance. Secondly, the PCB is designed, separately for each product or for each model because it has a different circuit. That is where the circuit is built. So you can almost say that no two PCBs, for two products are the same. So even for doing innovation, for doing R&D, you need to have a strong PCB industry. You need to have, those who are designing PCBs, designing the circuit. So very critical. So that is one area. The other area is among the passive components, which is the resistors and the capacitors, there is a category called surface mount design or SMT, surface mount technology. And then other is the through hole. So right now what we are making in the country is the through hole type of capacitors and resistors. What we need to manufacture more is now the SMT type, the surface mount type, which are also known as chip capacitors and chip resistors. They are very small. They are very, very small. And with miniaturization, a lot of these, chip capacitors and resistors are now being used because the through hole types are a little larger in size and they need more space. And we don't have any manufacturing of chip capacitors or resistors in the country. Shivalik Bimetals, Mr. Ghuman is here, and they make some shunt resistors, I think, which are kind of broadly categorized as the surface mount type, but they are still, I think, not as critical in technology as the other chip capacitors and resistors.
Can I find out
So
in
that
terms
is the
of the
other
PC?
area. So that is the other area. What else is there? Of course, I'm not talking about semiconductors. Semiconductors is a separate scheme altogether. And the other critical components for us are there are several materials which are very critical. For example, we don't make enough ferrites in the country, which are used in all the transformers. We need to support that. Uh, Even in the case of capacitors and the through hole type, while we have a decent industry, but we need to grow a lot. Magnets, for example, magnets are used in very, very widely used. We don't have a large enough industry, and most of them are the ferrite magnets. There are also some magnets which are made of other rare earth materials, which are also now being used. They have got different properties for use in different type of equipment. So all these are areas which are of great interest, I would say.
Maybe one last follow-up question. For the PCB manufacturing, given the water treatment waste management requirements, is it limited to just certain states or regions in India, or these plants can be effectively opened in most states and provinces in India? Pardon my ignorance.
No, there are two things which I would say. One is that I think the availability of water is very important for PCB. And the recycling of the water and the water treatment is even more important because you cannot possibly keep drawing unlimited water from whatever resources we have now. And water is becoming a very critical issue. So that is something very important. And PCBs would typically, I think, be made in states which have got large open land areas. While as an industry it does not need too much space, but I think from the point of view of the fact that it needs a lot of waste treatment and water treatment facilities, it needs more area, more space, and of course power supply. It consumes a lot of power, so you need to have a very reliable power there. There is one cluster which is being proposed in Madhya Pradesh right now, near Gwalior. So ELCINA is involved with that, and we are trying to get some companies there. So they have got enough water, and they are also power surplus.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. We have next question from Sangeeta. You can go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you for taking my question. So you've mentioned several times that this is a very capital intensive industry. Now, is the production process, once you set it up, very automated? Or is there a lot of, employment or labor involved there? So how does this industry stand out in terms of job creation, both on its own and in terms of the ancillaries, etc., which will develop around it? That's one question. The second is that given the characteristics you've mentioned, is the approach to sort of set up, these electronic parks or something like specialized areas where only the semiconductor industry would be set up? How exactly is the thinking on this? And what are the ancillary industries which can benefit from investments being made here?
Okay. I'll try to go one by one, and please, if I miss something, you let me know. I'll also try to be brief because we don't have unlimited time, but I will try to cover whatever best I can. Firstly, from the employment point of view, it is not the same in all segments of manufacturing. I mean, if you are looking at the semiconductor space, the investment to the employment generation ratio is not the same. I would say it may be even lower because it would be more. If you talk about the direct employment, it would be lower because it is very capital intensive. And I would say at best you may possibly have a capital, an investment to employment ratio of around 1:1 or something like that. Possibly if you have, 1,000 crore project, possibly at best you would be employing only, 800 to 1,000 people directly. If you look at components, possibly, the other components, it may be a little better. It may be 1:1.5, 1:2. And in categories like maybe like wound components, we talked about transformers and coils and all. It is more labor intensive, and you could possibly have a direct employment of maybe 1:3 or even 1:4, depending upon what process is followed. So typically, I would say that the smaller companies, they employ more, if you look at the investment to employment ratio. The other thing you asked me was about, okay, now if you, I mean, if you talk about the indirect, employment generation, possibly that would be quite high, around a large semiconductor project, because a lot of ancillaries would come up around it. A lot of service providers would come up around it. So I think it would be, the indirect investment would be pretty high. Similarly, in case of other components, if the direct employment is, let us say, 1:1 or 1:2, the indirect would be more than that. I mean, I would say that if you're employing two people directly, possibly it would give, employment to at least, two or three people indirectly as well. Because everywhere there will be an ecosystem coming around it. There will be logistics, and there'll be other suppliers coming around it. Regarding your question on clusters, yes, a lot of the industry which is coming up now, a lot of the industry earlier was not in clusters. It was on a one-off basis. So there would be an industrial estate and there would be maybe one or two electronics manufacturing companies there. So they were all together, the industrial, the chemical, the electronics. But I think the ecosystem for an electronics industry is more critical in the sense that it needs more specialized inputs. It needs possibly more test, measurement, certification, etc. So all these, facilities are coming up in clusters now, and it becomes a lot more efficient for companies, small or large, to operate in and around clusters because their supply chain can come there. Some of the larger companies which are coming up, with the mega projects, they are bringing in their supply chain in the cluster. So, for example, they ask the government to give them 50 acres, 100 acres of land. So all that land is not only for their factory or for their project. A lot of it is for their supply chain, their support, people who are coming. And some of the MNCs also bring in some suppliers from abroad by giving them, assured business and all that. So working in a cluster is more efficient. And this is a trend which has, I think, I won't say that clusters are a new thing or something which has happened only in the last few years, but I think very specialized clusters are a fairly new trend which has started in India maybe 10, 15 years back. And a lot of, clusters are coming up. And there is a scheme. In fact, there is now the second scheme has been launched by MIT, the Ministry of Electronics and IT. The earlier one was almost, I would say, 7, 8 years back, which was the EMC's 1.2 Electronics Manufacturing Cluster Scheme. And now the second one was rolled out about a year and a half back. And they are supporting the creation of specialized clusters for electronics.
Thank you.
I hope that answers something, if not everything, of what you asked. Yeah, please.
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have,
Can I go ahead?
yeah, we have,
I see Mr. Ghumman has got
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
you can go ahead with your question.
Yes, I just wanted to check if Mighty or ELCINA have some, have some facilitation to, for access to technology or joint ventures, as we would like to expand further into electronics. Right now, as you know, we are in a very niche space, but we would like to expand more into this. So in this, what can ELCINA or Mighty, how can they help in this?
Okay. As far as technology is concerned, I'll first talk about ELCINA. What we do is that we organize, B2B programs in all our events. Sorry, I was just asking for some tea. I'm running out of energy, I guess. So, as far as technology is concerned, one is that we do a lot of B2B programs, and we do them. I mean, of course, it's not very frequent, But like we do one during our Source India event in Chennai, which is a fairly large event now. We do it, that happens in Chennai every year. Then of course we do it with the Electronica, Productronica. So in these B2B programs, you meet, potential partners, not only suppliers and buyers, you also meet companies, or you can ask to meet companies which can become your technology partners or your collaborators. The other thing that ELCINA specifically does is that we have got very strong links in Taiwan and also in some other countries. I mean, we can even approach, for example, Japan, Korea, etc. And we can request them because we are in touch with their associations and their, their trade promotion bodies and even also their government. And we make a, specific request to them that our company or our, member company or, any company in the, in India wants so and so type of, partnership. So that is one way of doing it. The other way, of course, there are several consultants and if required, even we can approach, a consultant or, suggest a consultant to you. As far as MIT is concerned, Ministry of Electronics, uh, they have got several of these what you call centers of excellence. Uh, I mean, it depends. You need to find the one which meets your requirement. For example, there are, I mean, for example, if I look at, Shivalik, I mean, your company, you may be interested in some special materials. So there are some COEs which work on, new raw materials. And we can get you in touch with them. We can get you in touch with the concerned official, the concerned official in MIT. I mean, of course, these COEs, if some of them may be a little, bureaucratic, but they are quite effective. They're quite good. There is an agency by the name of CMET, which you may be knowing already, the Center for Materials and Electronics Technology. So they've got, several R&D labs, and so they do some specialized. So all these sources are there. So once you know what you, once you decide on what you are looking for, what you want, you can share it with us, and we'll be very happy to take you, ahead on this path and to take you to potential, whether it's in Taiwan or whether it is during one of our events or through MIT. All these,
Yeah.
I mean, all these options are very much there.
Okay.
Sure, sir.
Thank you.
And sir,
Thank you.
we'll request you to come back in the queue. There are several participants in line. Thank you so much, sir. We have next question from Deepak Agarwal. Deepak, sir, you can go ahead with your question.
Can we take 2, 3 more questions and then maybe the rest we can take offline or we can take on email?
Yes,
Sure,
again,
no worries.
Yeah, at about one,
So just
and
one question.
actually I have somebody waiting for me at about 1 o'clock. I have to get off, but please go ahead in the meantime.
Yes, sir. So just quickly, in PEPS 2.0, which are the component or sub-components we should look at a higher focus?
Can you ask that question again? EM 2.0, what 2.0?
So in specs 2.0, which we are planning to roll out over next couple of months, which all components or sub-components will be the key focus area
Okay.
for us? Yeah.
Okay. You see, I would say that firstly, I don't think it's going to be called specs because specs was specifically a capital subsidy scheme. This scheme will this will be a little sort of a hybrid scheme. In some cases, it will be only for it will only provide capital subsidy. In some cases, it will provide only production linked subsidy. While only in few cases where the support required is very high, it would be both capital subsidy and production subsidy. So that is one clarification I want to give you. The other thing is that the focus, as I said, of the government is very much on PCBs. And so there's going to be a lot of support for PCB industry. There's going to be a lot of support for the chip components, the chip passive components, not integrated circuits. I'm not talking about the semiconductor chips. I'm talking about the passive, chip components, which are basically resistors and capacitors. And there will be support for module manufacturers also, camera modules, audio modules, uh, because these are now required in very different formats, of course. There are, for example, a camera module can vary a lot if it is for a mobile or if it is for a CCTV camera or if it is for it's for an auto application. So because now these are being used everywhere. I mean, every automobile has got, audio system, video systems. Every security, product has got, camera modules or, video modules. All electronic, I mean, all consumer. So, modules are going to be an area where government wants to provide support, because while modules are not pure components, but they are, at a stage between the finished equipment and the component. And they're very important for, increasing value addition and for strengthening the supply chain. So these three areas are going to be, I think, focus areas. Other than that, I expect that there is going to be support for all, I mean, at least some support or the other for all components. I am a little doubtful about wound components, because wound components, there is some, a little bit of a, I mean, there is some hesitation in the government about supporting wound components. I don't really know why, but there is some hesitation there. But I think all other components will be receiving some support. Raw materials should receive some support. Other than that, I mean, for example, there'll be support for electromechanical components also, for relays, connectors, etc. And all these are now, for example, there is now, there is a change in technology to micro relays or micro connectors. So everything is getting, miniaturized. So there is demand and investment requirement in all of these. So they are all very, very viable. And see, in components, only thing I would like you all to understand is that it's a slightly longer gestation period industry. So you have to look at it from that point of view. It is not that you set up a SMT line and within 6 months, 8 months you start manufacturing. In most components, you will need at least 1.5 to 2 years before the company can start manufacturing and actually cutting. I would say, I mean, like issuing bills and invoices and starting selling its products. So you have to be a little patient from that point of view. But once the company is set up, it also has more resilience and more strength, because competition is not so easy.
Got it. Just two more sir, from my side, then I will come back in the queue. Second is on ATMP. Apart from wafer, any other components can be made in-house or the focus area from a government or association side, apart from the wafer in ATMP process?
See, all that I can tell you is that the wafer is not made in an ATMP plant. ATMP is the next level. It's a
Yeah, it's a
downstream
packaging.
project.
Yeah, it's the next level.
Yeah. So the wafer would be made in a fab, what you call a semiconductor fabrication unit. And that is a purely process industry. So starting from silicon, etc. Making it's a very complex technology. It's very, very capital intensive. But and also the number of fabs in the country are very few, because they're very large and their capacities are very large. So from that point of view, but ATMP, when you ask about ATMP, I mean, see, in an ATMP, for example, you can make different types of, you can package different types of chips. Uh, Basically, I would say that there would be, memory modules, or, memory modules are in very high demand because they are used everywhere. I mean, almost all equipment, all the USBs, all the memory devices that you have. Then you may have, the power management modules. So all these are different types of chips. Then there are, processors. Processors are slightly higher level, and there are different types of processors. So they also get actually made only in a ATMP plant.
Okay. Sorry, my question was slightly different. My question was when we look at focus from ELCINA or from a government side in a process of ATMP or OSAT, apart from wafer, any other subcomponent or allied industry where the focus will be, or which can be made, which can make in-house or made in India, apart from the wafer? I know wafer will be a larger capex and we will importing, but apart from wafer, which product which goes in ATM process?
See, I mean, all semiconductors have to be packaged. Even if you look at the discrete semiconductors, there is a huge demand for discrete semiconductors also. They are less in the news, but there is a huge demand for transistors and diodes, etc. in the country. The thing is that technology is moving ahead, and everything is now getting packaged into an into an IC. But still, I would say that that is an area where you can look at uh, investing with companies like, I mean, for example, I don't know too many, but I mean, I mentioned CDIL. CDIL is very big into discrete semiconductors, and they also make transistors. Uh, and Then there is a company by the name of RIR International. There are different hybrid modules also, which can be made. A lot of micro devices are there. So all these are based on different types of semiconductors. Whatever So I mean, I'm not saying that it's only. Uh, uh, I mean, I think what you're asking is what else can you invest in other than the pure ATMP, which are companies which are packaging uh, ICs, right? I think that is your question.
So what all can come to India apart from the ATM in a process of ATMP? So yes, there's a wafer and then there are allied sub products as well in ATM process. So which all sub products can come to India or will be the focus area
See,
because
there,
ATMP will become a larger part of
see, there is a huge requirement. I mean, if you look at ATMP or any semiconductor process, there is a huge requirement for different raw materials. They are all going to come to India. If there are chemicals, there are gases, uh, there are different types of what you call what they use in the packaging. Sorry, I'm forgetting. I'm not getting the name right now, but there is a. I have, for example, there are wires. There are molding compounds. There are lead frames. So all these are essential, and they are used in the manufacturing process, and they are consumables. So this is another line where there is going to be a huge not only demand but also a huge investment opportunity.
Got it. So thank you so much. I'll come back in the queue, Bhavani.
Yeah, I think there is more that I need to tell you in this area, but right now I'm not getting all the names. Maybe I need to uh,
Then sir,
look at
I'll
it a
come
little
back.
bit more.
I'll connect you offline. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
I'll
please.
connect offline.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bhavani, thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Yeah, thank you so much, sir. If you permit, we can take one last question if you only permit.
Yes, please. One more question, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sangeeta ma'am, you can go ahead with your question.
My question is answered. I'm sorry. I'll put my hand down.
Sure, sure, sir. Sure, sir. So, sir, thank you so much for joining the call. And always love to interact with you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, and I hope
So,
please invest a lot in electronics. So we have because this industry is going to grow. You can be sure of only one thing. All the macro indicators are hugely in favor of this industry. Whether it is automotive, whether it is consumer, whether it is IT, whether it is aerospace, whether it is, I mean, you name of anything, you have to have electronics in it, and it is growing. Okay, automobiles now typically have 10 to 30% of their BOM as electronics, even more in some cases, because the value is very high. The weight is low, the value is very high. The technology is there. So please go ahead and invest. Like,
Sure, sir, sure.
choose well, of course, because all investments are not good, but as an industry, it's a very positive industry. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Thank
much, sir. We
Thank you.
love to stay connected. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining in. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. We end the call.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Bhavani. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Devashish sir, for also joining the call.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Devashish sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goel.
Have a
Thank
good day.
you.
Bye.